In this video, I show you how I made the bicep armor for my Skyrim glass armor set. With a scrap piece of paper folded in half, I use the top of a saucer bowl to get the curve I need to draw out the shape for my base bicep piece. Then I mark along the edge and use my ruler to draw the sort of border for it. I do this on the inner and outer edge and then go over it with marker so it shows up better. I only do this on half so it'll be symmetrical when cut. Then I transfer the base pattern to foam. I need two of this first piece, so I trace it twice and cut them both out. I fold it over to trace out the second layer base pieces, and fold it over again to get the third layer. Once again, I trace these each twice and cut them all out. Then I cut this window from the pattern so I'm just left with the border and trace the border onto a very thin sheet of craft foam. I cut where I folded earlier to create the border pattern for the second layer and cut along where I folded the second time to get the third layer. Since this foam is so thin, I use scissors to cut it out and place the large cutout scraps in a bag to use on later projects. Using my rotary tool, I gently round over the inner edge of the borders and then trace the shapes onto the corresponding base pieces. I put contact cement on the base pieces where I had drawn, as well as on the back of the border pieces. Then, once it had about 5 minutes to set, I stick the borders to the bases. After this, I put contact cement on the back of the third layer and place it on top of the second layer to get a sort of outline of where I need to place the adhesive onto the second layer top. I repeat this for the first layer as well. Once they each set for 5 minutes, I stick them all together. I push it together and start forming the shape I want and hold it up to my arm. My rotary tool gets taken to the edges that didn't quite line up. Then I also round over the edges as well. A sanding sponge is used to finish smoothing this all out. Then I heat it with my heat gun. I heat it on the outside to get rid of fuzzy bits and heat seal it, and heat it on the inside to help give it a curve. Bending the two edges toward each other on the inside helps provide this shape. I hold it up to my arm to check the shape. Then, taking a mixture of matte gel medium and cornstarch, I make a paste to fill in the edges where the really thin foam separated from the base. After applying Plasti-Dip and letting that dry, I paint the window areas in a couple layers of brown paint to act as a base. Once the brown layers are dry, I go in with gold over top, starting at the edges, then filling in the center. I apply the second layer of gold with a larger brush to fill in any sparse areas of paint. After that's all dry, I mask off all the gold and begin painting the raised borders in a base layer of gray. This isn't really necessary since my teal paint is super opaque, but hey, I didn't know, so I did it anyway. See, here is the super opaque teal. I go over all the border areas with this teal, which only takes one layer, unlike a lot of the other paints. After the teal is dry, I use a large brush to add the interference green paint to try to give it a more even application. With the interference green layer applied and dried, I use a very tiny paintbrush to thickly paint marks on the edges, as well as quick back and forth motions to add some shine and scratch marks. If any spots have a bit too much, I wipe that away with my fingernail. Then, to add a little more dimension to the gold areas, I use copper and go around the edges where the teal and gold meet, as well as over any dents in the foam. Resin gets applied to all the teal areas. Then on to making the straps. Taking one of the D-rings, I measure out the width I need the straps to be and trace out the strips I need. This is a good use for some of the scraps I had from cutting out the wrong side for one of my gloves. I cut some of these in half to make the smaller strip to go around my arm. I decide to paint the back side and edges brown so they won't stick out so much as the stark white. Watering down the paint, I continue applying paint to the back and edges of the fake leather. My thought here is that it would soak into the fabric more and not end up so crunchy. Then I loop the end of the strap through the D-ring and sew that down. I stitch and back stitch a couple times to make sure it's secure. And then I put the other strap on the opposite side of the D-ring. After sewing each strap to the rings, I paint over the stitches to camouflage them a bit. To attach the straps to the bicep armor. I cut strips of Velcro and then cut them in half. With both hook and loop, or fuzzy and prickly, sides of the Velcro still together, I place the adhesive strip of the loop side to the foam and press the strap onto the adhesive strip of the hook side. Then I hot glue the other end of the strap onto the opposite side. I reinforce both the Velcro piece and strap with hot glue. And here are the finished bicep armor pieces. Thanks for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to my channel. If you have any questions about my first foam armor build, feel free to ask me in the comments below. I've created a playlist for my glass armor build work logs and have linked it on screen as well as in the description box below. Thanks again and have a great day.